We're ready whenever you are.
Did this come from our guys?
Is it an IT thing? No, it's not from our guy. That's us.
It is?
Wait, which IT?
All right, is everybody here? Yes. Okay. I'll call order the joint work session with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and the City Commission for Tuesday, October 8, 2019. We'll just start around the room. We'll start over there, Alicia.
Alicia Hammett, Prac.
Doug Neely, Prac.
Chris Cook, Prac.
Rocky Smith, City Commission.
Bill Daniels, Prac.
Frank O'Donnell, City Commission.
Lisa Novak, Prac.
Dan Holiday, Mayor.
Rachel Lyle Smith, City Commission.
Derek Kugel, Prac.
Karen Murray, Prac.
Troy Boldinger, Prac.
Denise McGriff, City Commission.
Tony Conkle, City Manager.
Phil Lewis, Community Services Director.
Okay, and I forgot to say, but please turn off or silence your phones. So, Mr. Lewis, how about it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today's meeting is a continuation of our previous meeting from September. As you recall, during the meeting, our previous meeting, we discussed primarily the boat ramp and location and had our consultant on hand to answer questions. Was asked to bring forward another meeting to continue the conversation, particularly around the conceptual master plan and any ideas that members of PRAC or the City Commission may have to move the conversation forward, how we utilize the park. So there's no formal presentation that I have prepared, more of a opportunity for the group to continue the conversation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And we have a couple of handouts. So what you have handout-wise is a version of the conceptual master plan in the 11 by 17. Additionally, you have a couple of other handouts that show an overlay of the existing park and then the conceptual master plan overlaid, which shows the existing boat ramp, the proposed boat ramp, which is the 200 feet down river of the current boat ramp, as well as all the additional improvements that are identified in the conceptual master plan. And then the other handout that you have, which is also an 11 by 17 format, is a two-sided. One has green space as identified in the current design, and then on the other side is green space as identified in the conceptual master plan. We do show an increase in overall green space and better connectivity for pedestrians and bicyclists in the conceptual plan. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or aid in the conversation.
Everybody speak at once.
May I start?
Certainly. Right. Hey, before we get started, if you go back to your agenda page on the screen, you'll see a request to speak button. We've got this many people. It'd be nice if you guys would use that so I can keep track of. I can't always see where everybody is.
Note that a couple folks don't have that. So you'll have to.
Well, I can see. I can see the ones on the screen right over to my side. So go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start off. Let's think about what our objective is. Do we want to be a park with a boat ramp or a boat ramp with a park? I'd like us to please keep this in mind as we continue our discussion and make our decisions. Thank you.
I have an addition to that comment, Mr. Mayor. I think the other option is that it's a park without a boat ramp.
I think the important point is like the boat ramp is like the tail wagging the dog. Let's pay attention to the overall picture. So I think all options are open, including no boat ramp.
Sorry. Commissioner Smith, Lyle Smith, sorry.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Last time you were here in September, one of the questions that we asked was about the usage of the boat ramps and some numbers of,
Fred, take over for a second, I gotta take this call.
do we know how much it's used? There were also nearby boat ramps that came up that we discussed.
Yeah.
Have we been able to get any information? Because that came up in the discussion of, do we even need a boat ramp with
Yeah.
surrounding or nearby boat ramps?
So I did have a follow-up conversation with the Oregon State Marine Board after our last meeting to discuss, again, what we discussed at the meeting, as well as follow up on some of the questions. We do have, we discussed the Meldrum Bar boat ramp, and it does have a dual ramp at that location. The comment I received back from the Marine Board is that, yes, it is a nice boat ramp, but the parking is really more of the issue, and that was more of their concern, is that Clackamas Park has a substantial amount of parking spaces for the region as compared when you look at some of the other boat ramp locations, and so that's their concern with the current ramp and not having it available at Clackamas, or Clackamas, excuse me, would be that not having that additional parking availability for users.
Can you comment on how often our overflow parking is in use? Because I believe that is kind of the area that we had also tentatively said if we were to move the RV park up. I think that's overflow parking, right? For the,
Yeah, so that would be, I could only give you anecdotal information at this point. And during the height of the fishing season, it is used, the overflow parking lot. But depending on the fish run and when it's open, it can be a very compact season or a longer period of time during the, again, in the spring and fall, primarily in the spring.
Yeah, I guess part of my reason for saying that is because if the Oregon Marine Board's concern, and one of the benefits that our park offers is ample parking, and we have an overflow lot that gets used, then it just kind of supports that discussion of that it's used. The parking spaces that we have are, providing a benefit that other neighbor boat ramp areas don't have. And my other follow-up question from last time was about the $250,000 grant. I know that was a surprise, I think, to some folks when we saw that on the slide. And I know you've had a chance to follow it with the Marine Board. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? The idea that if we don't do something, the grant money goes away, we'd have to pay it back. Can you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, definitely. And so my apologies if that took anyone by surprise. Originally, when we brought up the idea of having a master plan completed, it was to do a more formalized community engagement process, which would include finding all of this information, bringing it forward, having a public discussion. So when I brought forward at the last meeting with the options, it was the first time that I had the opportunity to really go into detail of what the different options were and any benefits or hindrances to move forward with the proposed boat ramp locations. I have had conversations with the Marine Board in relations to the boat ramp, again, either moving or keeping it in the same, either removing it completely or keeping it in the same location, but allowing it to continue until basically it was unusable or unsafe for users. If that were the case, the Marine Board would, requirement with the grant funding is that the city would repay the entirety of the grant funds that were used for the grant. They were able to give me rough numbers, but did not feel comfortable giving me a set number until they spoke with their governing body. So the Oregon State Marine Board, their director is going to be presenting information to them at a meeting later this month, at the end of October, to kind of provide them an update of the conversations that we've been having as a group and to better gauge their response to if we were to not have a boat ramp at the location, what their feelings would be as far as holding us accountable for those funds, given the current potential unusable boat ramp in the current location. And so the numbers I did receive from her, and again, what she estimated as a high-level estimate, would be somewhere in the up to $250,000 range for repayment. She did also say that the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife may also want repayment for some grant funds as well, but she could only speak to the Oregon State Marine Board.
So how long does it take before that requirement goes away?
So it would be the fulfillment of the obligations of the grant funds. And so we have some funds that were dated back as far as the late 90s that had a 25-year cycle. So we're kind of near that time frame. We have other funds that we used as early as a couple of years ago, which we would be responsible for paying back. The grant was issued for the temporary repairs that happened in 2016, which with the assumption of moving some of that infrastructure over to a new ramp location. And so they would request, I'm assuming, that grant in its entirety to be repaid by the city. But again, she didn't feel comfortable providing information to me until she had an opportunity to speak with her governing body.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
So I guess the problem that I see is I don't want to keep talking about the boat ramp for this whole meeting, because to me, the question is the RV park, not the boat ramp. This master plan or none of these concepts are usable to us unless we answer that one question first, which is whether we're going to have an RV park or not. So to me, that's the first question, because that's what's going to dictate a lot of, not only whether we have it or not, but where it's going to go. Is going to dictate everything else. And I think without kind of really addressing that question first in a conversation with all of us, I don't know how we go much further. My personal opinion is it would be a really bad idea to close the boat ramp, or well, I think it might be a bad idea to close the boat ramp too, but it's a bad idea to close the RV park. I think we've put so much time and effort into the RV park itself, not only in terms of concept, but in terms of planning and future planning, some of which has taken steps forward and then taken steps back. We clearly have a need for people. We definitely need more capacity in terms of places for tourists to stay. We have one hotel at the moment. We have the RV park as an option for a lot of people coming into Oregon City, and quite frequently we're told that there's very few other places that people can go other than the RV park in Oregon City. We made efforts in the last, what was the 2000? I want to believe that, I remember seeing more than just this concept improvement from 2013, so I don't know if we have anything else. Maybe my memory's poor on that, but in our packet, this map of the concepts for the RV park, I felt like there was more to that. More involved, but maybe this is what it was. Because I think, we definitely were having conversations about spending the money to bring the RV park to a different level, paving the roadways, upgrading it so that it was even more viable than it is now. Clearly, it's making money. It would be making more money if we were able to put the resources into making it a really nice place to stay. I think the mayor's comment last meeting about it being more viable on the riverfront than up near McDonald's is valid. So I think until we really have a conversation about whether we want to keep it or not, that's the first question. And then if we do want to keep it, is that the exact right location for it? You know, to me, I actually, in general, love this concept. The only problem with it is that if we do keep the RV park, which I think we should, it cuts the, you know, the green, it divides the access to the green space. So we have this amazing green space in McDonald's, in front of McDonald's, that we tend to forget because people don't go through the RV park to get to it. You know, and then is there a way that the RV park, you know, shifts down a ways and can utilize some of the other space that's not being used so that opens more open space to the other side of the park? I don't know that, if that's logistically possible, but I just personally think the RV park is a good amenity to Clackamas Park. If we can figure out at least a consensus on whether we want to keep that or not, that might make it a lot easier to start figuring out the other pieces of this. Because I definitely do want to see I would love to see a boat ramp stay there, but I just don't want to lose the amount of the park that we have, and I don't want the state telling us what to do with our park.
I get it, but we bought into that a long time ago, way before either one of us, so.
Sure.
I had a conversation with the president of Metro about Metro telling us what to do also. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Well, first, I want to say I do agree with Commissioner Rocky Smith on everything he said. Before we leave the boat ramp, and I don't want to make this lengthy, I want everybody to understand what did the $250,000 require us to do? Was it for the study, or was it for actual construction of the ramp?
That would be construction of the ramp primarily,
Okay.
the funds that were expended.
So if we don't do that, and everybody, I want everybody to know, I initiated the letter that asked Phil to look into this with the state, because I don't want to accept that liability at face value. Because I feel the ramp in its current condition was damaged by extraordinary circumstances, high flood waters, change in the channel, other things. And I don't want to get into the boat ramp in depth. The only question is, if we build a boat ramp, what is our contribution going to be toward building that boat ramp? Is it less than $250,000 or more than $250,000 to build a new boat ramp?
Yeah, the cost estimates that came back for the originally proposed ramp location, 350 feet downstream, were just over $1 million roughly. And so the amount of funds that have typically been spent by the city have been roughly 25, 30% of the cost of the improvements, and with the state picking up the other, 70, 75%.
So it's almost a push, 250,000 versus 250 to 300 if we build a ramp.
And it would
Okay.
depend on,
Enough said.
on the estimate.
Except it's not a push, because if we don't build the ramp, we gotta give the 250,000 back. If we do build the ramp, we're gonna spend 250 or 300,000.
And we get something.
Yeah.
But what we get under, and I don't want to dwell on this darn ramp. To put this ramp 200 feet below where it currently is a definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing that we just did and expecting a different outcome.
Right.
So that's as much as I want to talk about the ramp. I want to move on to the RV park. I think is a wonderful asset. As one who has camped around the country, that's the kind of place I would love to pull into for the night. And it's underutilized, it's underdeveloped. What we see here is, put in a few trees, some picnic tables, make it more enjoyable. It's actually underpriced, $25 for an inboard berth and $30 for a riverfront. That's incredibly underpriced. So I'm for keeping that place where it is, putting some money into it, make it more attractive. And if we want to do an overflow lot, I don't know if you're thinking in terms of the adjoining to the McDonald's as an overflow or what, but the one we have is making money in its condition now. Think what it would be if it was a more attractive draw, and I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Conker, can you come up for a second? So one of the issues with the RV park is that it has to close for a period of time during the winter. How hard would it be for us to raise the level of that land so it's outside of the, the normal floodplain, not the 50-year or the 100-year, but just to get it where we'd be dry 95% of the time?
Not knowing the elevations, but knowing the flooding events that we periodically have, even on a non-large event.
Right.
You know, I think that the trick's gonna be trying to match the balance cut and fill.
Right.
Bringing enough fill in there, where are we gonna cut in this area? And there's just not a lot of spots left to cut.
What about
that-
the cove?
That's spoken for. In terms of the
Oh,
balance cut and
okay.
fill, there's been utilized for the Edgewater, and then it's anticipated to be incorporated into the cove.
But
to-
we're anticipating a bunch of cut at the Lakesy project, right?
Potentially, I don't
I mean,
know.
if we're talking about, in the Riverwalk, we're talking about taking, putting the mill race back and using, because that's gonna require a lot of cut. Just an option I'm thinking of is, to make it more popular, if you could get users there during most of the time in the winter, that would be an option. Ms. Maury?
Actually, I have a partial question to your question. I think you're in the Greenway. Having lived on the Willamette River, there's a distinctive area where you can't do anything. And I'm thinking that piece of the park is probably in the Greenway.
Well, we can find that out, right?
I'm going to concur with Rocky. I think that the RV park is critical to our tourism. It fills a need that isn't filled anywhere else in the area. However, I really like the idea of moving it up to the overfill parking lot, AKA the old sewer treatment plant location. Be a great way to redeem that site. It raises it out, and Tony's right. That's a typical high water point now. That's not a flood event. That land is low. It fills regularly, and we waste a lot of money every year redoing the infrastructure. It's unusual for water to reach what's currently the overflow parking lot. And I'm not gung-ho on replacing the ramp. I think we're picking up on that. If parking is an issue, when the I-205 bridge expansion is done, is it possible we could improve and increase the parking at Sportcraft? There's some odd land shapes and stuff there that we don't make use of, and it's never really been well marked. So that's just a possible. And then Jerry's email was kind of helpful to me. It was something I hadn't thought about. We don't see the hog lines anymore.
That's right.
The overflow parking was spring and fall runs. I hadn't put two and two together, and Jerry did. It's the sea lions. So there is less and less use of that ramp for fishing purposes because there's less fishing going on down there.
Well, I'd like to hear that from somebody in the industry, not
I'll tell you, the
necessarily
hog
just Jerry
lines are
Herman.
gone, and I grew up with tugboats trying to get through 12 hog lines, and they're not there anymore.
Well, and I think part of it too may be the improvements that were made at the Sportcraft with the dual ramps there and the improvements over in Gladstone and Meldrum Bar. There are options in close
And I think we could
proximity.
add parking at Sportcraft when the bridge is done.
Commissioner McGriff?
Phil, could you use the pointer in, I'm not sure which one of those lots is the overflow lot? Okay. And the RV park is, okay.
Well,
Pretty much directly
Right,
below.
yeah, okay, just compare current conditions, okay. Well, then, I think I would concur with everyone else and suggest that we move the RV park to the overflow, because that's where I thought it was. It makes a lot of sense for us to expand it and make it better. People can still have the opportunity to walk down to the river because there's a way to get there, but I think we would have better utilization of the facility if we could have more year-round use, because people do come through here even when it's pouring down rain, they're stopping through. As Frank said, the boat ramp issue is kind of one of those things where I'm not gung-ho about giving the money back, but I'm also not gung-ho about moving it and putting more money into it, knowing that the inevitable outcome is going to be the outcome that we're facing right now. So I don't know if we can take some of the money and sort of shore up the existing one until it completely goes away, and then once it goes away, maybe maybe an act of God will happen, and then maybe we're out of our contract with the Marine Board to say, well, we didn't have any control over it getting whatever happened to it.
are there any PrAC members?
Mr. Cook?
So I just wanted to voice my agreement with pretty much everything that's been said. The idea of repairing the boat ramp or moving it, again, it's just going to happen again. We're going to pour out money. But also I want to think about, or have us think about, big picture, long term, with the Riverwalk. That's going to be a draw. I would hope it's going to be a draw. And there's an opportunity there, I think, to either, like we've mentioned, move the RV park up where it's more usable year-round, or even expand it. I think with the Riverwalk opening and you have a more economic draw into the area, there's an opportunity there to make it even more profitable. Just a thought. I'm not a big fan of the boat ramp. I'd rather expand the green space and give folks a open spot that's safe and usable by families.
Ernie?
Yeah. Basically what he said, he mentioned the possible expansion of the overnight facility. I think you're right. I think once we have access to the Riverwalk, I think the potential of more RVs coming into the area is going to increase dramatically. So, you might consider, at least in the long term, or not in the midterm, of having both areas available.
Mr. Daniels? I'll get you three.
I agree that the RV park should be up on the overflow parking. I think we got to be thinking about 5 years down the road. We're talking about the Riverwalk. We're talking about tourists coming in all year round, not just in the summer. And that allows it to be used all year round. We're not losing revenue. Certainly, it's along a bus route. People can get on the bus, don't have to take their RV into Oregon City to get to. So we had a parking seminar, but an open house on ways to get people into Main Street that are coming for the Riverwalk. And certainly Clackamat Park could be a hub for that, and people getting out of their cars and taking trolleys or buses to downtown. But certainly, I see no reason not to move it and increase the green space that's currently there in the park.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I tend to more agree with former Mayor Neely, and I'll say why. Those two locations are two very different locations. The one on the river is a different experience. It's on the river. It makes money currently. It has restrictions in that you can't provide sewage down there, which I think you probably could provide on the alternate.
Yeah, you could.
So, that's a different experience. So you got one, the one we're talking about opening. That's a different type of camping situation, and it provides alternate lodging to a hotel. So I'm in agreement with doing that, but I'm also in agreement with leaving the existing one open. Even in its current condition, it makes money. Could it make more money? I don't know. Do you have occupancy rates by month? Do we keep those?
Yes, I could provide those to the group.
We don't have them tonight. We don't know.
We do not have them tonight.
Okay, just a thought. I think they're two very different experiences with two very different clienteles.
Commissioner Bollinger?
Yeah, I'm not a ton in favor of moving the RV park to the overflow parking. I think the best use of that space is parking. I'm concerned that if we improve the park, the cove gets further developed and occupied with what's currently there. We have more traffic on Main Street and Clackamat Drive, and then we have slowing RVs turning in and out, crossing the street for dumping unless we did provide dumping there. And I think with the increased traffic and visitation of the park, you have a real challenge having RVs in and out of that main intersection there. In addition, I think to Commissioner O'Donnell's point, it's a different experience being on the river or not. I wonder if an option might be on the Clackamas side. There's the road that currently runs along the river that is not being used. It's not green space, it's blacktop that is unusable right now. And I wonder if we could do RV park down around that area and restoring the current RV park to more green space. And looking at the picture there, if we went through with the parking, that would provide parking close to that area. Families could get out of their cars, enjoy the green space, and go back, and keep more of the, I guess, day use or in and out kind of closer to the intersection, and the boats and RVs a little bit farther away from the intersection.
Mayor Neely?
Well, one thing I might suggest is that we've got the picture here of what's generally been used. The city also owns the land opposite McDonald's on the other side there, and whether that could potentially play into the extra parking and the considerations of where the RV park should be too, and whether that should be brought in the picture as well.
Where are you talking about?
Right across from the hotel, that land between McDonald's and the hotel is owned by the city, with the exception of the easement.
Just south of McDonald's, you have that drive aisle into it off of Dune Drive. The city owns that property, but there's an access easement for the benefit of McDonald's across that property.
Okay. I was not even aware of that. Well, I am more leaning towards making the parking lot, the upper overflow storage into the RV park and continuing to have the existing RV park where it is, because I think that really does provide a different kind of experience for folks that want to be, close to the water and that sort of thing. I hesitate to talk about removing the boat ramp without engaging the community that uses the boat ramp. And we haven't heard from any fishing guides or folks that regularly use that, that space. And I would, want to make sure we have a conversation with them about that before we were to make a decision to remove the boat ramp. I think, one of the things that Fish and Wildlife is doing, which, some people hate, but the fact is they're working to control the sea lions by shooting them. Yeah. And so, as that develops along, we're hoping that the fish will start, coming back some. So, just because we're maybe not seeing the most fishing right now, hopefully in 5 or 10 years, maybe that will turn around again. So that's kind of where I'm at. What would it take to just shore up the boat ramp where it is? Are they telling us they won't give us any money to do that? Is that the deal?
Yeah, so I think basically they would be unwilling to support continuing to make improvements there, knowing that the recommendation to move it down further. So I would imagine it would be on the city to make those improvements, and then any that's assuming the JPA, any improvements below the high water mark, that would be supported by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. Commissioner Glassmith.
Thanks. So we've talked a little bit about pedestrians and traffic. And I saw Mr. Lewis just left the room, ironically. Oh, his ears are burning, he's coming back. John, I'm talking about you, if you can stay in the room for a second. I said your ears were burning. So we've been talking about transportation. If we were to kind of redo this entire park, which is kind of what we're talking about, kind of a overhaul, I think we need crosswalks, possibly big speed bumps or something to slow down traffic in that area. So what are our options for wrapping lower cost transportation improvements into a park project? Completely separate, can be part of the project since it's pedestrian crossings and a safety issue there. Do you have any comments?
We do have on our transportation system plan to do a pedestrian crossing from the overflow parking lot towards the park, which would be on the section just south of the 99E bridge there. In developing the conceptual master plan, we did have conversations with Public Works and engineering to look at how to best allow pedestrians to cross from the overflow or proposed RV park location into the park proper. As you know, the current road takes you kind of in a more kind of a swooping drive path. The more of the 90-degree angle that is being proposed would allow more of a firm stop for folks to notice the crosswalk in that location. With the proximity of the crosswalk and the curve, I don't want to speak entirely on behalf of Public Works, but the consideration was the sight lines and being able to have cars, again, make that corner without being able to fully see the pedestrians trying to cross there from the overflow lot into the park. And so the location that you see currently was after we had many conversations around what are our best options, how could we do this in a way that was safest for pedestrians on that road.
So this master plan then includes transportation.
It included that
Upgrades,
conversation.
So typically, when we would do any type of a land use decision, the applicant, property owner is responsible for the frontage improvements adjacent to the site. So when we talk about transportation funds that would be available as a separate project, it would have to be SDC eligible, system development charge eligible. So they'd have to be in the CIP listing in order to spend system development charges on that.
Right.
Outside of that, there's not really transportation funding other than what we can put together through either amending plans or general fund to support that. So, you know, if we decided there were certain transportation, pedestrian amenities, and we tied that to the project as part of land use, potentially then the park project becomes liable for those improvements. Now, you know, without going through all that process to figure out what exactly we want, you know, I think the trick is if we're going to use transportation system development charges, it needs to be in one of the plans that's eligible to spend those funds.
Okay.
Anybody else?
I just requested to speak.
Oh, it's not up here.
I know, it's on a different agenda item, but yes, he's
Commissioner O'Donnell,
requesting to
Send it
speak.
by snail mail. Let me know when you get it.
Go ahead.
I'll make one comment. The depleted fishery is not due to the sea lions alone, but as the mayor says, it's cyclical. Who knows what the next run will be? So I'm respectful of that comment. I do want to call attention to something in Jerry's memo that says, item 4, if the park plan is revised to equally emphasize people, uses, and wildlife benefits, a host of funding becomes viable. Specifically, the Oregon Wildlife Heritage Foundation, mitigation funding as an adjunct to Clackamas Cove, and Clackamas County Tourism Development Commission master planning. So there are advantages to going in that direction. Thank you.
Mr. Kugel.
I have to agree with Frank on that. I saw that and thought that was a great idea also. Going back on the boat ramp, I think we're fooling ourselves thinking that's going to last very long. I hate to be fiscally responsible. I don't think that we can really throw any more money at that. And also, I'm looking at it with the predicted huge increase of tourism going down to Legacy. We may need that parking area where the boat and trailers are right now to maximize the amount of funds coming into the city. So with the removal of the boat ramp, we'd open up the parking also.
And just one more quick note. Frank, you had asked previously about the number of counts for the RV park. Just looking at our revenue totals, around 5,100 stays annually.
And how many months of the year do we choose to close it?
Typically, it depends on the weather and the runoff, but we typically close right around Thanksgiving. We try to stay open through Thanksgiving for folks to be able to come and visit family. So end of November, and then we reopen as soon as we can, as soon as the last high water event has happened for the year. So typically April.
It would be a curiosity to me because I went down there and I toured it and I spoke to the camp host and all. And they seem to say that a lot of local people use that RV park. And are they required to say their city or state of origin when they sign in? Because it'd be nice to know if they're local or out of state.
They do fill out a card. We don't, I don't have
We don't
those numbers
compile it, okay.
handy, but we probably could put together a couple of snapshots of what that looks like.
I mean, there's so much to offer there between that and the other area we don't even talk about, which would be more primitive camping. You know, I mean, take a look at that. It's gorgeous. I mean, as one who traveled the United States, I'd throw my tent down there any night.
Yeah.
So,
Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, the place beyond the RV park, which we're really not talking about, but that whole area there, it's huge.
yes.
And it's way higher than the RV park. That's the place that we kind of envision as a tent area, tent camping in the RV park. I mean, logistically, it's gonna be harder to get RVs farther back, but if you could somehow utilize that point in a better way for the RV park where it's a little higher, then that does open still a lot of,
What if you flip
green
it?
space there. Well, that was the point that I think you made, someone made, who made that? Someone made that point.
No,
You did.
you put the RV park
Volunteer did. Putting the RV park on the other side. but-
on the top, and then you use tent camping where the RV park
Well,
is now.
Yeah, right. But, I mean, maybe there's a way to, I mean, part of the logistics is, you know, if we're really thinking big, do we think about how that road comes in completely, which we've sort of, you know, looked at by changing that corner, but, you know, I don't know if there's a way to have that road curve in a different way or something that might change it a little bit more, but that's a huge space, that area in front of McDonald's all the way to the hotel. I mean, there's a lot of space there.
What, would it be possible to have, what's the road between the hotel and McDonald's?
Dunes.
Dunes Drive.
Dunes Drive? Could you have Dunes Drive come straight
Come
in?
in right in there to the RV park
Is
and
there,
service
is there
it.
too much
That'd be-
elevation change?
If you look at
There's
this
quite a bit
map,
of elevation change.
yeah, there is. I mean, you have a ramp going down, but I mean, that would access that whole area through that. That's a great idea, though. It's possible, maybe.
Anything's
It's
possible.
steep.
The only question is cost.
Right. That's right.
Commissioner
It's just a
Lasmith.
cool area.
All right, so, Mr. Lewis, can you help all of us? Where are we trying to go tonight? Where's our, I mean, we've talked about this for another 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So what's next?
I think staff would be looking for direction from the group on next steps, whether you would like us to move forward with additional master planning work to try to refine some of those questions that we have around feasibility of, you know, do we look at, to Mayor Holliday's point, you know, coming off the road there, the elevation change, it just changing the 90-degree angle and entrance into the park is going to take some additional study, engineering to look at cut fill opportunities. There is an additional elevation change there. Elevation change from where that corner entrance is up towards McDonald's, it does start to go up versus compared to where the park sits, and so the elevation change continues to rise as you head south on Clackamas Drive. So I think just direction as to, again, the RV park and the boat ramp are the two main pieces that we really need to have a better understanding of what you'd like to see us do. If we do have direction from the group to look into the possibility of not having the boat ramp, then we need to have further conversations with the Oregon State Marine Board to vet out what that would really look like. We probably need to have a continuing public engagement process around what that would look like for the users of the boat ramp currently. And that would be one way to initiate that process. The other piece is looking at the feasibility of, you know, if we keep the ramp or the RV park in the current location, what type of infrastructure would you like to see us invest in its current location? We have not invested heavily in the RV park for many years because of the continual flooding. It's difficult to maintain. If that is the permanent location that we're going to keep, we probably would look at doing some more permanent improvements in that location. or again, looking to move the RV park into the overflow parking area and really start to delve into what is possible in that location, including hookups, electrical, building out probably to a 30% set in that location.
So you have these two round ovals here across from parking. The right one, is that?
Serious?
Yeah, I'm guessing so. The one that's closer to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Is that area out of the typical floodplain?
Yes, out of the typical floodplain. So the conceptual plan, again, showed more of a, in this area to be more of a resilient area. It currently floods where the RV park sits. That's kind of the first area that begins to flood when we have high water events. And then to kind of with that location flooding regularly and with the cut fill most likely needed in this area to really allow for this to flood more regularly, and then to allow these areas to be built up a little bit more to allow for infrastructure improvements, including parking, the infrastructure improvements around the roadway. The additional oval that you see over here next to that is we envision as maybe more of a an area that could be rentable for weddings or family reunions. We envision maybe a shelter space, the connectivity.
Sorry. I'm going back.
There we go. We envision the connectivity to the.
Okay, we'll take whatever. There we go.
So we envision the connectivity to the hotel across the road, that maybe a family could have an outdoor wedding space at the park and have hotel rooms and maybe indoor space at the hotel across the street. That could be an option, an opportunity.
It's not like we have a shortage of wedding venues in Oregon City.
That is true.
Always need another one.
Ms. Murray.
Okay, I think we're almost at a consensus. Now I'm going to come up with a new idea. RVs can be self-contained. Could we do an improved RV lot in the overflow lot and maintain that lower space for self-contained? Yes. And not mess with the infrastructure?
For the lower area for self-contained?
Because I'm agreeing with Frank that we're going to have a growing need, and I have had people complain that it's full and they can't get in. But we could do away with the infrastructure, charge a little less, and say park here.
And that's always an option, if that's the wish of the commission and this group. We did have conversations, had a conversation with the design team that helped us with the conceptual plan, and they said to a WAG on bringing this conceptual design up to a 30% set to match what we would end up getting from the Marine Board on, or working with the Marine Board on the boat ramp. For the remainder of the park would be probably in the $90,000 to $100,000 range in order to do those construction 30% designs.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Just to comment on Karen's comment, I believe the lower park, the existing one, with the exception of sewage lines, has electricity.
It does,
not?
correct.
So, I mean, that's the only thing, and Laxton never will have it because of restrictions on the site. I mean, a few trees and some picnic tables would go a long way to make it more amenable.
Yeah, the
RV park now has power, right?
It has
Yes,
power.
it does. Yeah, that's what I said. It has electricity.
But it doesn't have to have.
It does need to be upgraded. Current RVs have a higher demand for electricity compared to what we currently have for the amperage for the current hookups. But so we often have folks that that blow their circuit on the hookup.
Is that a centralized box or is that individual boxes at the site?
Individual boxes. Yeah.
Well, again, I'm in favor of keeping both for the very different experience. If I could get a riverfront lot when I was out running the country, I was there.
And you didn't necessarily need power.
No, I didn't. I've done both. I've done RV camping and I've done tent camping, and they're both enjoyable in their own way, and they're a different clientele seeking a different experience.
But anything from a Class C, where Class A has a generator on board.
They do. They do.
That's not a bad idea. Mr. Daniels?
Again, the problem with keeping the RV park where it's at, and I understand what Mr. O'Donnell's talking about, is the beauty of the location. The problem is it still divides that park. It separates both sides of that park by having that there. That's what's happening now, and that's what'll happen if we decide to leave it there. My recommendation would have been would be to move it up above and then make the duration, the time you can stay there for only 1 week, not 2, to open it up, consistently having people come in, because we will have visitors coming in from all over the country who are going to need that kind of opportunity. They're not necessarily looking for a riverfront, they're just looking for a place to park that RV to be able to visit the Riverwalk.
Okay, Mr. Cook?
So it sounds like there's a consensus to keep the RV park and maybe even expand it and make it more attractive and think about, long-term benefits to that, which I agree with. Going back to the boat ramp, though, what I would like to see is, to the mayor's point earlier, getting some feedback from those that do use it today. Is it a deal breaker for them, or are they using Gladstone also? Are they using some other ramp to get up there? Is this one more difficult to use than those? I'd like to hear that feedback. And then also, going back to the grant money, if it hasn't been done already, I'd like to see staff kind of dig into what really is in that agreement. Is it written that the money that was used to shore the existing ramp up, and those materials have to be used to build a new boat ramp somewhere else? I just want to make sure we do our due diligence and make sure that we are not on the hook or if we are on the hook, great. But I would want to confirm that and validate it, make sure that we are actually on the hook, and it's not just the state's interpretation of what they feel is right or wrong in this case. And as far as improvements we keep on talking about improvements to the existing ramp. I don't see it as an improvement. I see it as maintenance. If it is good enough for now, we let it die on the vine until we're not under the obligation of the current grant money, maybe we do that.
And what is the current duration of the most recent grant money?
I believe it's a 20-year cycle.
It'd be surprising to think to me that a 20-year life cycle on a boat ramp, it seemed to me that it would be much shorter than that, maybe half of that.
On an active river, yeah. I think so.
That's where I feel we need to do a lot of due diligence and kind of dig into that original agreement.
Yeah, so the state's going to be providing, after their conversation with the board, a memo detailing their position as far as the history of the ramp, the requests that have been made by the city over the years, the agreements that we have in place, and then what they would require for repayment. So after they meet the director with the board, they should be able to provide all of that information for us.
Okay. Any further questions or comments?
Dan, I have a question. So
Commissioner Griff.
we would have had to sign some sort of an agreement when we did the boat ramp, and it's probably here somewhere in our files. I think it's good that we would get information from the State Marine Board, but I think we should look at our own paperwork, make sure that we've got the correct information, and maybe the state isn't correct. So we should probably do that. I'm not saying they aren't, but we signed something some time ago, and it's around that we need to locate it and take a look at it.
I'll just say this, I was lead engineer for a major company, and there's a lot of times I was involved in things like this where somebody told me to build something, and I built it according to their specs, and it failed, and they've got some liability in the issue too.
Sure. Anybody else?
I do have going off what Mr. Griffith was saying, is if we need to look into it, because if the boat ramp is not plausible, there's got to be a way out where they can't hold you the money if you've done your due diligence and haven't done anything wrong and have made every effort to, in this case, put a boat ramp there, but it's just not gonna work, then I can't believe that they're gonna hold you to that fully.
I think Mr. Conkle gets the message that we need to take a look at that.
Yeah.
I would just assume that there's some kind of depreciation involved.
Sure, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I mean, the dollar was worth a lot less 25 years ago, right?
And so to that point, we have not done a lot of background research in that for that purpose because we did not have clear direction from this group whether or not that was an option. So we can definitely go through and pull all of the documents that we have, start to do that research. Now that it sounds like there's at least some interest in seeing what it would look like without having the ramp there.
Yeah, so it sounds like just to clarify, you're gonna move forward investigating the grant aspects. You're gonna move forward in investigating all of these options that we've talked about for the master plan, correct?
Yeah.
And then ideally somewhere in there, you're gonna look at public outreach for around the boat ramp.
And you're going to
Do you
get
have
that all
questions
done
about
before 1st November, right?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, when we say, I mean, the option, are there more than one option that you're asking us to bring back as it relates to the RV park? So what I heard was, look at keeping the existing one and then look at a new one in the overflow parking.
Actually, I think there's a couple of different options there.
Okay, can we-
The overflow parking, maybe keeping the current RV park as a no hookup site. Maybe you charge, $50 a night or $60 a night for the ones that are up there next to McDonald's in the overflow parking, that have, power and sewer and all that, and you charge a lesser amount for those there. Or maybe you move the RV park itself upper to the south, and they use part of that other green space area where the RV park was for some kind of tent camping. So I think there's a couple, three different, options.
I think, it's not just the use, it's, in order to make some of these improvements, we have to do balance, cut, and fill. And the existing spot where the RV park is now is gonna use to balance, to take the cut, to put the fill in, to do the road alignments and the new access way into the facility. So I think, we can go back and look at those and see what that looks like. If we're gonna raise anything in this area, whether it be the new intersection or the road, or the entrance into the park, we gotta cut that somewhere. So we'll have to look at that and see what that looks like. And then concerning, more of a primitive RV park, I guess just one thing to consider is, if we're gonna invest the money in upkeep and we've got electrical there, are there ways to upgrade the electrical? Just from a standpoint of, do you want 25 generators going all night along the river?
Yeah.
Well, the true question is, what do 25 individual upgrade boxes cost?
But right, versus weighing,
Right.
knowing that you're gonna end up with a generator system right along there every night during the summer, which I think is.
Well, I think it could be engineered so that you're, you can even have a centralized power system that's up right next to the road and just have conduits that go down to those individual connectors, and you should be able to engineer it in such a way that it can be waterproofed, and you just go in and seal them up at the end of the year.
I think that's what we were thinking about. If we were going to invest in the RV park at its current facility, we would make that investment in trying to figure out, because we have a significant maintenance issue of hooking up and dehooking the electrical. So if there was a better way to do that, which there probably is, that would be the investment. So.
And the other point with the primitive RV parking or making the improvements and still not having hookups in the frontage of the Willamette is that our current conceptual design anticipated moving the RV park and having full hookups for sewer as well. And so the dump station is not identified in the current conceptual plan, which would take out a good chunk of the play area as identified in the plan. So if it's of interest in keeping the RV park without hookups near the water's edge, we would have to make those adjustments to the play areas.
Why don't we work with the county and move the dump station to the west facility?
Oh.
It's close to the source, isn't it?
Well, I know people who don't stay there that use that dump station.
Oh, certainly, the fact that Monday morning.
But the point is, you know, if you're gonna have a dump station, why not have it at the sewer treatment plant?
That's a good idea.
Right, would they go up Agnes Avenue? Yeah.
Well, we're gonna improve Agnes,
Yeah.
you know, in the Cove project. I don't think it's intended, it's never intended to go through, right?
Not currently until we deal with 213, 205 interchange.
Right, but you can still come in from the backside and get down there.
True.
Okay, so heard kind of 3 kind of concepts to look at.
Yeah.
You got them?
I think I understand. So we want to look at moving the RV park across the street, full hookups. We want to look at what cost it would be to make improvements to the lower RV park. And we want to look at the opportunities to not have the ramp in, on the Clackamas side and engaging the community on what that would look like.
Well, and I think,
And then have the conversations with the Marine Corps.
let's not overlook the possibility of some tent campsites as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
of using the upper lawn area.
Yeah, either one.
It truly is it's an attractive area.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Okay, well, we've beat this horse, so,
Yeah.
we're adjourned and we'll take on the next meeting here. We're gonna take about a 5-minute break.